my goddess Palki Sharma might truly be schizophrenic. Her show is notorious for spreading rumors and slandering China, promoting India-US cooperation to counter China, and boasting that India will replace China as a superpower. However, recently, under the beating of the US, Bharat Empire media has started fantasizing about aligning with China and Russia to oppose China, completely forgetting their role as a watchdog for the US and the West. Yesterday, she released another video hyping that China's defiance of the US ban on purchasing Russian oil hit a wall. As she reported, China indeed disregards the US stance and will continue buying Russian and Iranian oil for its energy security, unlike the Bharat Empire, which fears the stick of its US master. China and the US stand as equals, and China will not accept US orders. I know that US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent complained in late July that Chinese negotiators were extremely tough, preferring US tariffs over stopping purchases of Russian oil and gas. However, Indian media did not report China's tough stance against the US. If a week after the fact Palki started reporting that China's defiance made the US hit a wall, does this mean her conscience has awakened? Of course not. This venomous liar of a woman never stops slandering China. She reported this because the US also warned India not to buy Russian oil, but to purchase oil developed through US-Pakistan cooperation. Trump imposed a 25% tariff on India, higher than on India's main ASEAN competitors, which is a devastating blow to Indian manufacturing and exports. Modi, under Trump's threats, dares not speak out. BJP media, following instructions, began hyping India's friendliness with China and Russia, shaping an anti-US triangle. Yet she forgot that the internet has a memory. Modi, BJP media, and especially she herself have repeatedly smeared and slandered China, and the Chinese remember it all clearly. The mainstream sentiment in China is simple. China will never ally with a stray dog that constantly switches masters. The Bharat beggar empire's weak strength is akin to Italy during World War II, offering no help against the US and only becoming a burden to China. With 1.4 billion citizens and powerful economic, military, technological, and diplomatic strength, China does not need to ally with such a weak country, which would only hinder its actions. Modi should remember that he recently called Chinese people small-eyed and Chinese goods inferior, urging Indians not to buy them. For such a clownish nation that constantly provokes China, China must wield its stick, following the US beating, to make it understand that a stray dog barking recklessly faces a miserable fate. The competition between China and the US is a clash of titans. Whoever wins, the opponent still earns glory. But no matter who wins, the watchdog must obey the new master. For a long time, India has used its southern nation identity to undermine collective actions of organizations like BRICS and SCO, speaking for the US. On one hand, it buys Russian and Iranian oil and gas at low prices for resale profits. On the other, it curries favor with the US and Western countries to maintain exports. The Biden administration tolerated this, as feeding the watchdog is a US obligation. But after Trump returned to the White House, all of Biden's policies were overturned. From his first term, Trump knows clearly that the Bharat Empire cannot be a qualified watchdog. It barks fiercely but never dares to bite. When an opponent raises a stick, it immediately falls silent and surrenders. Giving dog food to such a nation is a complete waste of resources. It's better to harvest it to fuel the US. Honestly, the Bharat Empire needs Russian and Iranian oil because it is cheap and stable. Even discounted, Gulf countries cannot offer the same low prices. The Indian government is already heavily in debt, with 1/3 of its annual fiscal revenue used to pay interest. After US tariffs, India's hundreds of billions in trade surplus with the US may vanish. Plus, Trump's tightening of H-1B visas for Indians, banning companies like Microsoft and Google from hiring them, will reduce India's overseas remittances. International capital is rapidly exiting India. In May 2025, foreign investment in India dropped by 98%, a staggering extent. Moreover, India imports vast amounts of goods, raw materials, and components from China annually, with a trade deficit reaching hundreds of billions of dollars. India is truly out of money. If it uses precious US dollar reserves to buy Middle Eastern or US oil and gas, India's fiscal deficit will grow larger, eventually collapsing. Modi has long relied on data fraud, using cow dung GDP to deceive citizens. But in reality, India's position in the global division of labor is increasingly insignificant, and its international influence is declining. After botching diplomacy, India has been isolated by all major powers, left without a single true friend. Opposition leader Rahul Gandhi constantly questions Modi and BJP in Congress, demanding the truth about the air battle loss to Pakistan. Modi and Gaudiya media's empire of lies is crumbling. Indian people will soon realize that the Bharat cow dung empire is not a superpower but a super laughingstock. Nearly all countries worldwide mock India, furious at the uncivilized behavior of Indian immigrants and tourists. India's poor sanitation, backward infrastructure, and extremely low population quality are attaching one negative label after another, impossible to tear off. These are entirely contrary to Modi's claims of Bharat's revival and becoming a developed nation by 2047. Modi, long projecting a tough image, remains silent and dares not strongly retaliate in the face of Trump's constant humiliation and tariff stick. This contrast has made many Indians realize that Modi and BJP are just bluster, lacking the courage and strength to confront true world powers. Seeing China's tough stance against the US, many Indians understand what a real world power is. In Trump's words, Modi holds no cards. He doesn't care about India's dying economy. India must yield to the US or face harsher sanctions. Meanwhile, Pakistan, declared a miserable failure by Modi, gained Trump's recognition. He invited Munir to Washington for lunch and confirmed that Pakistan shot down 5 Indian fighter jets while announcing US-Pakistan cooperation to develop oil for sale to India. This contrast is unbearable for Indian people. The Bharat beggar empire is so easily slaughtered and humiliated internationally. So what has Modi's 11-year rule brought to India? 11 years ago, when Modi took office, India was a promising economy, discussed alongside China. India was courted by major powers like Russia, China, Europe, and the US. But 11 years later, India has not only been sanctioned and humiliated by China, but also lost traditional allies like Russia and Iran. Even worse, the US master's stick hits harder than anyone else's. What has Modi revived in these 11 years? The Bharat cow dung empire, a beggar dynasty? Palki, as a news anchor who has always hyped Modi and BJP, don't you want to explain? What exactly have you done to India?